This is a fantasy anime where the main character is a complete loser. He's the kind of pathetic guy you actually root for to fail. And he really does fail, but unfortunately, there are moments when he wins. His name is Tuka, and he lived alone in a village. In this world, 3 years after the hero Cyan sealed the Great Gate of Hell, the gate unexpectedly reopened. Now the world was once again swarming with demons, but none of that bothered Tuka. His only concern was finding a girlfriend. I've been through that. I know it's tough, but that still doesn't justify putting a dress on a vegetable and pretending that vegetable is your girlfriend. One of those crazy days, his childhood friend Yuna scolds him, telling him to get a grip and stop acting like an idiot. In response, he starts explaining his plan for a possible zombie apocalypse. And in the middle of that insane talk, he says his main goal would be to protect her big bouncy melons. Yuna does not like that and kicks him right in the balls. She tells him that a failure like him would never survive in a zombie apocalypse. While she's saying that, Tuka is busy showing off one of his traps. It's a trap so obvious even a blind animal could dodge it. Out of nowhere, a demon suddenly appears and starts attacking the villagers without mercy. Tuka panics and hides behind a tree. While hiding, he sees Yuna on the ground, about to be attacked by the creature. At that moment, Tuka nearly fries his brain trying to come up with a clever idea. He decides to grill some pork, thinking that maybe pork would smell better than human meat. But it seemed like that demon was more interested in the nearby melons. Before the monster could strike, Cyan shows up and slices it in half, killing it instantly. Naturally, Cyan gets all of Yuna's attention. After all, he's the great hero and just saved her. So she makes a bold offer, saying she wants to give him a more intimate reward. But before he can accept, he smells the grilled meat and runs off to try it. At that exact moment, he falls straight into the trap. And just like that, the great hero dies impaled by the trap Tuka made. The villagers panic when they see their savior die such a ridiculous death and start throwing rocks at Tuka. They say they're going to put him on trial, but quickly realize no one would believe the great hero died from such a dumb trap. Afraid of being blamed, they decide to just hide the hero's body and pretend nothing happened. The next day, Tuka wakes up in the hero's body. He thinks he's gone insane and rushes to Yuna's house to check. At first, he's furious about the situation, but then remembers that Yuna is completely in love with the hero. So he figures this is the perfect chance to escape his lonely life. When Yuna sees the great hero, she starts acting all flirty, but then notices he reeks. She's weirded out and slaps him. That's when his eye literally falls out of his face, scaring her to death. She grabs a stick and charges at him, thinking he's a zombie. Tuka, terrified, shouts that he's not the hero, he's Tuka. Even so, she whacks him on the head. Right after that, they try to figure out what happened, how Tuka ended up in the hero's body. That's when they hear a voice coming from the field, saying it was her necromancy that caused all this. They run over and find a girl caught in a trap Tuka had made himself. The poor thing is giving it her all not to die there. She introduces herself as angry and says she'll only explain everything if they get her out of the trap. Once saved, she says she promised Cyan she'd give his body to someone else, someone who could save the world in his place. It was a promise they made in case Cyan ever died. And she chose Tuka specifically because he managed to defeat Cyan and capture her. Before Tuka can make sense of anything, Yuna already accepts the mission, saying she'll go with him on this journey. When he tries to say no, Angry threatens to destroy his real body, saying it's sealed inside a magical artifact known as the Coffin of the Living, and that he has no choice but to follow her plan. Angry then takes them both to the city of Balloom, where Cyan used to prepare for his adventures. While Yuna and Tuka argue about how irresponsible he is, a group of girls shows up and melts at the sight of the great hero. This, in a way, makes Tuka feel grateful to be in the hero's body. Right after that, they all head to a weapon shop, and Tuka ends up spending almost all their money trying to impress some girls. That stupidity leaves them completely broke. When he asks Angry for help, she reveals that she doesn't have any money at all, since she never received any kind of reward. After all, the necromancy she uses is a forbidden magic. Now that they're broke, Tuka decides to use the hero's appearance to take advantage of people's goodwill. That way, he manages to score a free meal. His companions are deeply embarrassed and decide that the best course of action is to register with the Adventurers Guild and take on some real work. Tuka, however, doesn't like that. He wanted to live the easy life. That's when a few girls show up offering to help him get rid of that awful stench he's carrying around. But to confirm he's the real hero, they ask him to duel with their muscular bodyguard first. Tuka, excited by the chance to see some female bodies for the first time, agrees without a second thought. He's confident he'll win. After all, He's holding a sacred sword. But when he jumps behind the giant and tries to strike, his sword bends. Right after that, he takes a punch to the face from the bodyguard, and his eye literally falls out, revealing to everyone that he's just a fraud. The townspeople then gather to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, at the guild, the girls land a mission involving demon hunting. And best of all, the reward is insanely high. Yuna gets super excited about the job, until suddenly a man named Kyle shows up. He's an old partner of the great hero, and he quickly asks the necromancer where the hero is gone. So she tells him everything that happened. Later that night, the townsfolk tie Tuka to a post. They plan to execute him as an example, but then Kyle and the girls arrive at the scene. Kyle walks up to Tuka, cuts his ropes, and even hands him the real sacred sword. Kyle asks Tuka to imagine a giant sword, and as soon as he does, the blade transforms instantly. Like magic, everyone in town sees it and starts to believe he really is the true hero. But moments later, the sword falls to the ground, and everyone starts to doubt again. Yuna quickly steps in and says she can prove he's the real great hero, and it'll be very simple. All he has to do is kill more demons than anyone else on a certain mission, and everyone agrees to wait and see. Later, the group receives word that more than 20 demons have appeared, and this leaves Tuka absolutely terrified. He turns to Henri and complains that even his sword won't stand up. She tells him the problem isn't the sword, it's him. He has an embarrassingly low amount of mana. Upon hearing that, Henri starts to reflect that maybe giving Tuka the hero's body was a huge mistake. Tuka tries to argue, saying that maybe he has so much mana that he can't control it, and that's why the sword won't stay firm. So Henri pulls out a magic crystal that glows according to a person's mana level, and when Tuka squeezes the crystal, they can barely see a light in the center, which shows his mana is only at level 1. Kyle comments that with a level that low, Tuka's body will decompose quickly, so Kyle suggests that he take over the hero's body instead. Yuna and Toka agree to the idea, but Henri refuses, saying Kyle would never be able to defeat Cyan in a duel. But Toka did. She says that if she had to bet the fate of the world on someone, without a doubt, she'd bet on Tuka. Kyle then draws his sword and asks Henri if she'd still let Tuka be the hero, even if he killed the imposter. Tuka tells Kyle he's a zombie and can't be killed, but Kyle replies that he could be killed by cutting off his head. Even after hearing that, Henri shows no reaction, so Kyle gives up. He was just bluffing to see if she would cave. In the end, he offers to take Tuka's place on the mission and earn the money they need. Later that night, lying in bed, Tuka starts thinking that he'll never have to touch a weapon again, and now he's just going to enjoy his life as the great hero. But then he remembers that life is hard, and nothing comes that easy. He starts to suspect that Kyle might be waiting for the perfect chance to let him die. So, to avoid dying, he decides to sneak out during the night to recover his body. He goes to the girls' room to steal the coffin-shaped necklace that Henri carries, but then he gets distracted by the sight of the girls sleeping and completely forgets what he came there to do. That's when he hears footsteps and hides outside the window. He sees Kyle entering the room and trying to break the necklace with a knife, but the magical barrier Henri placed on the item protects it, and this causes the girls to wake up just as he flees the room. Tuka, who saw everything, confirms that Kyle isn't someone to be trusted, but out of nowhere, Yuna appears, and when she sees Toka hiding there, she immediately punches him in the face, because it looked like he was spying on them while they were sleeping. The next morning, they all set off on the demon hunt together with other adventurers. Along the way, Kyle asks about Tuka's injuries, and Tuka says he fell down the stairs. A terrible lie, but Kyle doesn't suspect a thing. During the journey, Tuka notices that Kyle goes out of his way to maintain the image of a good guy in front of others, so he decides to stay close to Henri to keep an eye on the necklace. Farther ahead, they arrive at an abandoned fort, which turns out to be a demon's hideout. The adventurers decide to split up, but Tuka doesn't want to go off alone, since he knows he'll be the first victim. Then Kyle says everything will be fine, because the great hero once defeated 100 demons alone in the great battle 3 years ago. Suddenly, a terrifying demon appears and slams a man to the ground, leaving everyone in shock. Moments later, the monster vanishes and reappears right in the middle of the group. It quickly decapitates one of the adventurers and teleports again, throwing everyone into a panic, Tuka included. The monster then lands on top of Toka, knocks him down, and pierces his heart, before leaping into a magical rune in the sky. As the monster returns to the ground to attack the rest of the group, Kyle summons a magical sword that slices the demon clean in half. Afterward, Kyle collects the demon's heart, which is a magical crystal, and hands it to Yuna, saying she can use it to cast protective spells for the group. With everything resolved, Tuka approaches the group, claiming that he was the one who protected them up to that point, and therefore, he should be the one to keep the crystal. But at that very moment, a legion of monsters emerges from the forest. Their goal is simple: eliminate the great hero. That's when he realizes the absurd number of enemies. Tuka quickly runs to the fortress, and seeing the great hero running, everyone follows him. Once inside the lair, they're greeted right at the entrance by another wave of monsters, and just by seeing the insane amount of human skeletons scattered across the ground, Tuka panics, thinking everyone there is doomed to become monster food. However, Henri quickly steps in and uses her magic to reanimate the skeletons, turning them into a zombie army under her command. Kyle doesn't hesitate and rushes into the fight, while Yuna finds the courage to join in as well. Meanwhile, Tuka is still trying to come up with a way to escape, but at that moment, one of the demons hits his hand with a hot slime, which melts all the flesh off. Right after that, a monster charges at Yuna, but by pure luck, or misfortune, the slime only dissolves her clothes, which completely distracts the monster for a moment. Even though she's extremely embarrassed, Yuna takes advantage of the opening to escape and hide. Tuka follows her, but when he gets too close, she slaps him hard. Yuna only calms down after he offers her a spare outfit, which just so happens to be a bikini. Suddenly, they hear a monster approaching again. Tuka draws his sword and transforms it into a whip. As soon as the demon enters, he traps the creature with the whip, then tries to harden the sword to immobilize it. His plan works, and he tells Yuna to attack without hesitation. But suddenly, something bizarre happens. The monster reveals it has an eternal passion for socks, which emotionally rattles Tuka and makes him ask Yuna to go easy on it. But that request just makes her even angrier. To make it worse, she's full of energy thanks to a new magic she mastered. She leaps into the air and lands a solid punch right in the monster's stomach. The blow is so strong that it sends the creature flying into the wall and knocks it out. They barely have time to celebrate, because Kyle suddenly appears and knocks Yuna out with a blow from behind, just to get a chance to eliminate the imposter. Tuka tries to react, grabbing his sword, but Kyle, with supernatural reflexes, shatters the weapon before Tuka can do anything. He starts talking about how he almost became the great hero, but lost everything with the unexpected arrival of Cyan. And ever since Henri joined the group, he had tried to use her necromancy powers to eliminate the hero, but always failed. Now he's finally close to fulfilling his dream of becoming famous and rich, and his only obstacle is a dumb hillbilly. Wasting no time, he throws a magic shuriken at Tuka and pins him to the wall. Tuka then confronts him verbally, saying he's pathetic for betraying humanity just for vanity. Kyle goes into a rage, summons a magical star, and is about to deliver the final blow. But at that moment, Yuna suddenly reappears, kicking him in the head. He crashes into the wall, and when he gets up to attack again, he's hit by a disgusting purple slime that dissolves his clothes. When he turns around, he sees Henri along with a new summoned demon. She explains that other adventurers came to help her, and she rushed over to check if Tuka was okay. She stares Kyle down and threatens him, saying that if he doesn't want to die, he better turn back now. But Kyle is obsessed and promises to rip the magic crystal heart out of her. In response, Tuka tells everyone to run. Kyle chases them, throwing several magic stars, but misses every single one. Tuka finally has a good idea and transforms his sword into a wall to shield the group, hiding everyone behind it. Tuka asks Henri about her crystal heart, and she reveals that necromancers are humans who were born in hell. 3 years ago, some of them managed to cross into the world of the living, but they were hunted by humans. Fortunately, she met Cyan, who was the only one to treat her like a real person. She then offers herself up to receive any punishment Tuka thinks is fair. After all, she hadn't been honest with the group. But instead of judging her, Tuka says he sees a promising future in her. Then he says that when she's a bit older, he'll give her the punishment she deserves, because in the future, she'll become a great woman. And since Kyle is still hunting them down, they decide to set a trap for him. They position themselves in a dead-end alley to lure him in on purpose. Kyle senses something is off, but steps onto the bridge anyway, quickly realizing it's a trap. The pet demon takes advantage of the moment and drops hot slime from above. Kyle dodges just in time, then turns and throws a shuriken at the monster. Henri, having overused her monster control magic, faints. Seeing how critical the situation is, Tuka throws away his sword as a sign of surrender and begs Kyle to spare Henri and let him go. Kyle calmly walks toward them. He picks up the great hero's sword, but quickly realizes it's just a replica. That's when Tuka reveals his plan and retrieves the real sword, which was disguised as the fake bridge. This causes Kyle to fall straight into the deep waters, resulting in his death. After that, the group returns to the city and manages to pay off part of their debt using the reward money. With the money, Henri decides to buy a brand new pair of socks to please her master. And to avoid further problems in that town, Tuka and his group decide to head to the capital, with the goal of funding their adventure directly with the king. Along the way, he ends up getting involved in several new adventures, all to raise the money they need to pay their debt. But in the meantime, Tuka starts losing parts of his own body, since he can't regenerate due to a lack of mana. 10 days after starting this journey, he ends up turning into a walking skeleton. And because his mind is always filled with weird ideas, he decides to use this new appearance to secure a privileged spot while his partner is taking a bath. Yuna sees the skeleton and almost buries him right then and there, but Henri arrives just in time and explains that this is her master. But Yuna refuses to acknowledge him as her master in any way. Later, during a conversation, Tuka realizes that if he goes to the capital looking like a skeleton, he'll only cause chaos. So he suggests that Henri take over the hero's body, restoring his flesh using her massive amount of mana. After that, she could return him to the hero's body, and they could continue their journey. However, Henri rejects the idea. She says that switching bodies like that could turn Tuka into an even bigger pervert than he already is. She then starts discussing new ways to make money with Yuna. Then Tuka has one of those absurd ideas that, surprisingly, ends up working in the end. He molds a face onto the sword, paints the features using natural pigments, and turns it into a mask. With that, he manages to enter the royal palace without drawing attention. Inside, he asks the king to fund his future adventures, and the king bursts out laughing, thinking he's just told a joke. After all, Cyan always worked without receiving a single coin from the king. Even after saving the world, Cyan never accepted a single gold piece. So the king comes to the conclusion that the hero has finally come to ask for the princess's hand in marriage. He orders his butler to escort him to the princess's room. He knocks on the door, and the moment the princess opens it, his hormones take over, and he starts sweating so much that his mask literally melts. Seeing that terrifying face, the princess slams the door shut. But Tuka manages to convince her to open the door again, and he shows his real face, claiming that it was the result of a demonic curse. The princess believes his lie and asks if he's finally come to fulfill the promise of marrying her. When he says no, she reminds him of the promise Cyan made, that he would only return to see her when he was ready to marry. She then tells him to leave. Tuka then thinks about all the debt he accumulated while using the hero's body. So he accepts the marriage proposal, believing that this way the king will fund everything he does. After hearing that, the princess invites him to a masquerade ball happening in 2 days in the capital. Even while thinking about his debts, Tuka gets excited by the idea of actually going out with a real person and not a piece of vegetable. So of course, he accepts. And she even offers to help with his disguise, painting a special mask for him. Meanwhile, in the city, Henri is wearing a knight's helmet to hide her necromancer identity. She's accompanied by Yuna, but suddenly someone bumps into her, and her helmet falls off. A green-haired man picks it up and hands it back to her. He says that a demon hunt is about to begin, which is why everyone's in such a hurry. Later, at an orphanage, he introduces himself as Leland, a doctor and the director of that orphanage. Leland warns Henri to be careful, since she looks like a necromancer. If people find out, she might become a target in the upcoming hunt. When she asks why he's helping them, he says he simply enjoys doing good and takes pride in being a good person. Henri feels like she can trust him and is about to reveal their whole mission. But Yuna interrupts, saying their goal there is to increase Henri's mana. Leland shows them a medicine called Soma Drops, which provides a temporary mana boost. The cost of this mana boost is 100,000 coins, and since they don't have any money, he says he'd like to study Henri's body in exchange. Yuna offers herself instead, but he explains that he's not interested in her body. What he really wants to study is the magic crystal that replaced Henri's heart. Specifically, he wants to study it for medical reasons. Back at the palace, Tuka's new mask is ready, and as soon as he receives it, the princess prepares to devour a massive feast, as it's the only way she can recover the mana she spent to create the mask. However, not even a meal fit for 10 people is enough, and she collapses from exhaustion. Tuka rushes her to her room and lays her on the bed. At that moment, Isaac, the princess's guard, shows up and scolds the hero. reminding him that the princess has a condition that prevents her from retaining mana for long. Soon after, a maid arrives with more food and a mana-replenishing potion, which quickly helps the princess recover her strength. Meanwhile, in the forest, the girls reach a demon-infested area where the famous hunt is about to take place. They plan to earn money to buy the medicine. But before they can do anything, one of the kingdom's four most powerful knights, Ciruela, appears and slices a giant demon as if cutting through butter. Right after that, two adventurers show up and offer to lead Henri and Yuna to a secret hunting spot where they won't have to compete with elite knights. The adventurers take the girls to the top of a cliff, where they can see a group of demons. There, they hand Henri an enchanted crystal with electric magic. One of the boys says she has enough mana to defeat them all alone, and using the crystal, she fires a lightning bolt that hits all the monsters. When the adventurers approach to collect the demons' hearts, they reveal that this was all a trap to capture the two girls. At the same time, a mysterious figure known as the Skeleton Man emerges from the shadows of the forest. After the hunt, Ciruela returns to the castle and informs the king that the forest has been completely purged of demons. She also reports detecting an extremely powerful spell coming from a remote area. Upon investigating, she found traces of burnt flesh and demonic blood. The strangest part was that there were no bodies present, which makes the king consider canceling the upcoming celebrations. But the woman reassures the king, saying she will keep the knights on high alert. Not only that, but the great hero Cyan will be present at the event. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the castle, the princess shows Tuca his new room, then leaves for a medical consultation in the city. As soon as she leaves, the lazy farmer finally remembers the real reason he came to the capital and escapes through the balcony, determined to search for Henri and Yuna. After asking around, he finds out that the two were last seen heading toward the orphanage. When he gets there, he's greeted by the princess, who's being treated by Leland. When Tuca asks about the girls, Leland responds that they went off to take part in a demon hunt in the forest. He assures him they'll be back soon, and Tuca, relieved, accompanies the princess back to the palace after her appointment. Later, Leland heads down to the basement. He puts on his skeleton man mask and walks to the cell where Yuna is chained up. He reveals his plan to turn all people into skeletons and offer the unnecessary parts, like skin and muscle, to the demons. He's completely insane, believing that this is the only way humans can coexist peacefully with such creatures. He also plans to blame everything on Henri, making her face the wrath and judgment of the people. Yuna could use her enhancement magic to break free from her chains, but she decides to wait for the right moment, as the demon in front of her is too strong. So when he's distracted or away, she'll finally escape. 2 days later, the princess finally shows up at the masquerade ball, after leaving Tuca waiting for hours. But Isaac keeps insisting that the so-called great hero is not to be trusted, which earns him a slap from the princess for doubting her suitor. As they leave, Isaac admits he knows the man by the princess's side isn't the real hero, but a fraud. He vows to make the imposter pay for deceiving the princess. Isaac remembers the affection he always felt for the princess, like she was his own daughter. He also recalls that the king decided to marry her to the hero to ensure the continuation of the royal bloodline, so that the next heir would be incredibly powerful. Back in the present, the couple participates in a competition. In this event, the princess must shoot an arrow at an apple placed on the hero's head. If she succeeds, she wins a full year's supply of apples. Luckily for Tuca, she hits the apple dead on without killing him, guaranteeing that day's lunch, which makes the princess quite plump and satisfied. Ciruela, who is spying on them under Isaac's orders, notices that the hero doesn't seem to be wearing a mask, but rather an actual skull. This only increases her suspicion. At the same time, the princess shares a very romantic moment with Tuca. She takes him to a secluded spot to show him a special kind of fireworks. But she realizes something is off when his behavior completely changes, and he doesn't remember the memories they've shared. Growing suspicious, she confronts him and asks who he really is. At that moment, Isaac and Ciruela appear and press Tuca until he confesses the truth. After hearing the full story, they accuse him of killing the real hero and impersonating him using forbidden magic. And when they turn to hear what the princess has to say, they realize she's disappeared. It turns out the revelation was so shocking that she had a breakdown and ran back to her room. On the way, she's approached by Leland, who calmly asks her to tell him everything that happened. While the guards search for the princess, a knight informs Ciruela that several demons have suddenly appeared in the city. Tuca, who had already been knocked down, gets up and runs desperately to try and rescue the princess. Leland leads her to a poor area of the city, where they're surrounded by his skeleton army. Just as Leland is about to attack, Tuca arrives to confront him. Two skeletons try to stop him, but Tuca defeats them with ease. However, a third skeleton manages to slam him against the wall. Seeing his weakness, Leland realizes Tuca is not who he claimed to be. When Tuca tries to stand up and give a heroic speech, he's caught off guard by a skeleton that slices off his head with a sword. The princess, witnessing this, begins to lose hope. In the city, Ciruela faces off against a horde of monsters, but she defeats all of them with a single blow. She instructs the other knights to protect the people, while she goes to search for the princess. At the orphanage, the demon guard leaves to eat, and one of the doctor's assistants opens Yuna's cell to prepare her for a sacrifice. She takes advantage of the moment and uses her strength-enhancing magic to break her chains and knock out the assistant with a devastating punch. Outside, Ciruela and Isaac find Tuca's decapitated head. But Tuca isn't dead, and he quickly explains what happened. He tries to guide the two of them to where the doctor took the princess, and Isaac starts to doubt whether he's truly a traitor. Tuca insists that he wants to save the princess, because that's the only way he can redeem himself and prove he can be a true hero. Not to mention, he also wants to avoid his own death. So he disguises himself as one of Leland's guards, restrains two of the kingdom's most powerful soldiers, and leads them to the doctor's hideout. Now in a safe location, Isaac suddenly confesses that everything happening is actually his fault. He says he put the princess through harsh training to prepare her to be the perfect bride for Sion, which caused her to develop stress-induced mana effusion syndrome, forcing her to eat constantly to restore her mana. Tuca then acts like the truly wicked guy he is. Instead of supporting the guard or telling him it's not his fault, he says Isaac is a real villain, one who completely ruined the princess's life, making Isaac feel even guiltier. At that moment, a wall beside them is smashed open, and Yuna appears, punching a demon. Upon meeting up, Tuca updates Yuna on everything that happened. Fortunately, they manage to capture one of the villains, and the group decides to give him a chance. If he reveals where the princess is, he'll be spared, and the captured enemy ends up confessing everything. They decide to rescue Henri first, before going after the princess. They quickly find her tied to a chair in a secret room in the basement. But before untying her, Tuca and Yuna play rock, paper, scissors to decide who has to do it, since she's completely soaked from crying so much. Meanwhile, hidden in a dark corner of the city, the doctor prepares to begin his ritual. He tells the princess that he hates judgment and discrimination, because deep down, under the skin, everyone is just a skeleton. He reveals he was inspired by the legendary hero to save everyone and create a world without war. And his conclusion is much simpler than the great heroes. He decided to rip off everyone's skin and muscles, leaving them alive as skeletons. He then admits that he's in love with the princess, and that this bizarre ritual is also their wedding ceremony. Isaac and Ciruela are hiding behind some pillars at the entrance of the room. Watching this disgusting scene from afar, the bodyguard is ready to jump in after hearing such filth. But Ciruela reminds him that they should also give Tuca a chance, to see if he truly is the great hero. Tuca and his group are observing from above, waiting for the perfect moment to act. Henri asks him to distract the doctor so she can create an opening to take control of the skeletons. Then, at the exact moment the doctor moves to attack the princess, Tuca drops down with Henri and Yuna on his back, trying to punch the weirdo in the face. He lands the punch, but only breaks his own arm, as the blow has no effect at all. Next, Yuna activates her enhancement magic and lands a solid punch on the doctor, slamming him straight into a wall. Tuca then formally introduces himself to the princess, but the doctor orders his skeletons to attack. However, it's already too late. Henri has taken control of them, and they now completely ignore the villain's commands. Tuca puts on the villain's magical mask, which has X-ray vision. The villain used it to see everyone as skeletons. But Tuca, being who he is, wanted to use it to see girls naked. However, he ends up taking a solid kick to the face. Immediately after, demons appear from their hiding spots to attack the group, and the doctor uses the chaos as an opportunity to escape. Ciruela and Isaac tell the others to go after him while they hold off the demons. Yuna uses magic to fly up onto the villain's shoulders, but he summons bony hands that grab her and help him stand. He reveals that they are now in an underground cemetery and begins summoning a horde of zombies with his necromancy. He also takes multiple doses from his mana vials to gain more strength and fight everyone, even though he knows that eventually his body and mind probably won't be able to take it. With his boosted magic, he creates weapons and enhances the powers of his new army. Henri tries to counterattack, but her sword breaks, and she's thrown to the ground by the enemy's force. Right after that, the doctor orders his zombies to capture the princess. And just as the princess is about to be struck, Isaac throws himself in front of her and protects her. Tuca quickly transforms his sword into a wall and completely blocks the incoming attack. This gives the group the perfect chance to escape through the door. Once outside, they decide to settle the battle right then and there, to prevent the conflict from reaching the city and putting more civilians at risk. Meanwhile, Leland follows the trail of blood left by Isaac, leading his skeleton army. But he doesn't realize that the trail is fake. It was created on purpose to confuse him. This clever plan surprises the girls, who begin to wonder who Tuca really is. He reveals that before all the chaos began, his father dragged him and his mother to loot a city destroyed by war. But the situation was far worse than they expected. His mother died, and his father disappeared. Tuca had to survive on his own, running and hiding for a year until he managed to return home. That whole experience shaped his cunning and strategic mindset. After finishing the story, it's clear the girls were touched by everything he said. But soon, Yuna brings everyone back to focus, reminding them they're still in serious trouble. Tuca suggests waiting for the doctor to run out of mana, but Yuna points out that with all the mana he absorbed from the vials, it will take days for his supply to be depleted. What they need now is for the great hero to unleash his powers. However, Tuca can't, due to his mana limitations. The only way for him to regain his heroic form is by absorbing mana through someone's bodily fluids. Isaac then recalls that the princess has an absurd amount of mana due to her condition, so her fluids could be used to give Tuca a boost. The girls come to the conclusion that they need to perform another one of Tuca's bizarre rituals, where a girl pours her warm yellow juice on him, giving him a surge of energy. But Tuca comes up with another idea. Since the princess wasn't able to let out her warm juice, he says that the doctor isn't even a real necromancer. He doesn't use his own magic, but instead channels the magic from a crystal on his wrist. So to defeat him, all they have to do is break the crystal. With that in mind, they begin planning. Yuna notes that the villain usually keeps a few skeletons nearby as a precaution, so when he strays too far from them, he'll become an easier target. Elsewhere in the forest, Leland begins to suspect something and uses magic to analyze the blood he's following. He realizes it's fake, but by this point in the story, he's moved his army exactly as the heroes predicted. Tuca's plan works perfectly. He sneaks into the skeleton army while Leland is distracted and tries to stab him, but the blade can't pierce his body. Leland reveals he was expecting this all along, and then creates a metal shield around his body. He commands his skeletons to attack Tuca, but Yuna and Henri had already taken care of all of them while the doctor was rambling on with his speech. Leland raises his arm with the crystal to call the zombies back, but Tuca pulls back his sleeve, revealing the magical gem that is the source of his power. Just as planned, the princess, who had been positioned in a strategic spot with her bow ready, fires a precise arrow that shatters the crystal. That causes him to lose control over the undead. Yuna quickly charges in and slaps Leland hard across the face, and right after they tie him to a tree. Soon after, the princess appears with her guards, but the moment of relief doesn't last, because now that red-headed demon shows up, carrying an unconscious Ciruela in his arms. Henri identifies him as a high-class demon. He launches a powerful attack straight at the princess, and Tuca reacts instantly by pushing her out of the way. But he ends up taking a blow to the head, which knocks him out instantly. Yuna finds a fallen crystal nearby, uses magic to launch herself with it, and charges at the creature. She starts throwing a flurry of punches, but the monster easily blocks them all, even praising Yuna, saying she seems to be somewhat useful. During the fight, Yuna manages to land a kick to his face, but it has almost no effect. When she discovers that Tuca is still alive, but just barely, she begs Henri to return him to his original body. However, the necromancer refuses, saying that in his current state, if he's returned to his body, he'll definitely die. The supreme demon doesn't like their conversation, so he throws Yuna against a tree, then focuses entirely on Henri. He says she shouldn't be feeling human emotions like sadness, and because she's becoming too human, he'll take her back to the underworld. He then knocks her out to remove her from the fight and turns to defeat the rest of the group. He heads toward the princess, but before he can act, Isaac appears and intercepts him with his sword. He tells the princess to run as far as she can while he holds off the monster. During the escape, Yuna regains consciousness and quickly rejoins the fight against the demon, buying even more time for the princess. The princess doesn't run. In fact, she tries to transfer some mana to the hero, using her warm bodily fluid, but she can't do it because she's too nervous. At that moment, Tuka awakens and asks her to fulfill his final request. He wants to see her wearing stockings. After saying this, he passes out again, and the princess begins to beg him not to leave. She confesses that she ended up falling in love with his pathetic, hopeless self, and then she starts crying. Really crying. Elsewhere, just as Yuna and Isaac are about to collapse from mana exhaustion, Tuka appears with his body fully regenerated thanks to the princess's tears. He makes a triumphant entrance into the battle, wielding his sword. The enemy fires another energy beam, but Tuka transforms his sword into a shield and blocks it effortlessly. Then, he turns the blade into a giant chicken leg and smashes the monster with it, defeating the enemy once and for all. In the end, this whole story reaches the ears of two evil necromancers in another part of the city, and they become even more excited about the idea of defeating such a powerful human. After all the chaos, Leyland ends up completely losing his sanity from having taken those two mana vials, and for now, he's being held in the capital's cells. Ciruela is hospitalized, recovering from her injuries, and Isaac applies for the position of orphanage director. The princess's crying allowed her to release years of repressed emotions, which cured the mana defect in her body. Because of that, she gives her surplus mana drops to Tuka. Now he can finally walk around as a new hero. So they set off on a journey to seal the gates of hell once more. The king gifts their group with a magical carriage, and since it needs mana to operate, Henri, who has the highest mana level, ends up being the driver and the team's battery. At departure, Isaac gives the hero a letter from the princess. In it, she thanks the three of them and reveals she left a gift inside the carriage. That gift is the princess herself, hidden inside a box, intending to join the team and train Tuka to become a true hero. However, our trio of main characters doesn't even open the box for the first few days, and when they finally do, they find the princess nearly starving to death. 15 days after the mission begins, the group sets up camp near Myra Lake, and the princess takes the opportunity to teach Tuka how to fight with a sword. He asks if the capital will be alright without her, and she assures him that Isaac is very competent and can handle everything on his own. She says she'll train him to become skilled, so he doesn't have to rely solely on them to win a fight. At that moment, Henri shows up holding a small bird, and just as they're about to kill it for dinner, the princess says it's a carrier bird bringing a letter from Ciruela. In the message, she says that when the red-faced demon was defeated in the forest, one of the kingdom's mages saw an astral form flying northeast. That indicates the demon was being controlled remotely, most likely by a real necromancer. Ciruela assigns the group to investigate and resolve this new problem, but Tuka sends back a reply telling her to handle it herself, since now he has more important responsibilities as a true hero. Later on, they decide to take a break in the first town they come across. The girls obviously go take a bath after a long time without one. They're reeking like actual skunks, and while chatting, they complain about how unlucky they were to fall in love with a dumb farmer. It's okay, girls. You didn't fall in love with him. It was the anime's writer who made that atrocity happen. During the conversation, Yuna remembers how Tuka never paid any attention to her, and when she steps out of the bath, she bumps right into Tuka himself. As always, they end up arguing, and it results in Yuna running out of the inn to cool her head. She ends up leaving without her clothes, and suddenly she's attacked by zombies. While trying to defend herself, she gets bitten by one of them. When more undead show up, she realizes she's at a complete disadvantage and hides in a corner. The bite on her neck starts to burn, and Tuka shows up to check on her. At that moment, she collapses in pain on the ground, and Tuka sees more zombies approaching, so he raises a wall to protect them both. Then she starts transforming into a zombie, so she begs Tuka to remove the wall. When he complies, she walks over to the side of the zombies and pleads for him to run away and leave her behind. Desperate to save his best friend, Tuka throws himself into the crowd of zombies and tries to rescue Yuna. But before he can reach her, he's attacked by the undead. At that moment, a man named Belarco appears on a nearby rooftop and offers to help, but with one condition. He wants Tuka to admit he's not the real hero. So after Tuka says it, Belarco jumps straight into battle, and just from landing, he already takes out several zombies. However, he ends up twisting his ankle. Meanwhile, zombies also invade the bathhouse area, catching Henri and the princess by surprise. Henri finds some magic crystals, uses one to summon a sword, hands the other to the princess, and starts firing magical projectiles at the zombies, eliminating them with precision. Right after they defeat the enemies, Tuka shows up carrying Yuna. At first, he doesn't say she was bitten, choosing to hide what happened because he doesn't know how Henri and the princess will react. Together, they realize running to the carriage isn't a good idea, as the distance is too great, and it would only increase the risk of being attacked. Tuca then says he wants to stay right there, no matter what happens, until they find out what's behind all this and put an end to it. Belarco, who's been listening through the door, suggests they start by investigating the mayor's mansion, where the survivors are hiding. As soon as Tuca climbs the mansion walls, the survivors begin to regain hope. Among them are Leland's former allies, Colin and Negan, who want to settle scores with the hero because of past events. They quickly notice Yuna was bitten and demand to examine her. Tuca tries to stop them, which only makes them more suspicious. In the end, they decide she must be eliminated as a threat to the group, and with the crowd's support, the adventurers charge at Yuna. Just as Colin is about to strike with his sword, Tuca unleashes an immense power and knocks both of them out with a punch. Everyone starts protesting, but Tuca draws his sword and makes it clear he'll protect those he loves, no matter what. At that exact moment, Yuna wakes up, but completely out of control. She lunges at Tuca, slamming him to the ground, and he tries to bring her back to normal, but it doesn't work. Henri uses her magic and manages to control Yuna, calming the situation entirely. She also convinces everyone that Yuna is just suffering from a cold. Later, with the whole group gathered, Henri gives them a crystal that allows them to see Yuna's soul. They see her soul is wrapped in a spell that removed her consciousness and free will. This spell leaves the person practically soulless, a hollow body, making her body ideal to be manipulated through necromancy. They decide that as soon as morning comes, they'll go out to find whoever cast the spell and destroy the crystal, freeing Yuna and the entire town all at once. To keep Yuna under control, Henri concludes that she'll have to possess Yuna's body. But Tuca asks to be the one to enter her body instead, since Henri needs to be free to deal with any zombies that show up. In the middle of the night, a gigantic demon appears and breaks through one of the mansion walls. The group wakes up from the noise and heads downstairs to see what's going on. And then they discover that the zombies managed to get inside. Henri uses necromancy to hold back part of the zombie horde, while the rest flee with the survivors. They reach a room where the mayor is cornered by a demon, but the princess fires a magical ice arrow that instantly kills the enemy. The mayor then leads everyone through a secret passage to a room protected by reinforced steel. He says that the first signs of this transformation appeared 3 days ago, but he didn't think it was anything serious. Suddenly everything escalated, and now he doesn't know how to deal with it. The princess then assures him that they will find a solution and reverse everything. She also begins to suspect that a demon is behind all of this, and Henri confirms, explaining that the signs indicate this is the work of a high-ranking demon. Tuca uses magic to track the demons, and soon after, they come up with a plan to fully attack them. But before they can put the plan into action, the room begins to shake, and Tuca detects the presence of something coming from below. Suddenly, 3 demons burst in from beneath the ground, and they try to stab Tuca with their tentacles, and actually succeed. But thanks to Tuca's current high mana level, he easily regenerates from the hits. Negan strikes one of the monsters with his spear, but it causes an explosion that sends him flying into a wall, knocking him out. Another demon grabs the princess, but she uses a special Imperial escape spell and manages to flee by leaping away. The group now decides to retreat, but they're still being pursued by the demons. Colin creates a magical clone and leaves it behind. The monster touches the clone and gets shocked. Right after that, one of the monsters falls to the ground, but it quickly gets back up. Belarco tries to stop the creature, but the monster is suddenly affected by a spell that sends it into a berserker-like state. It throws the spear-wielding soldiers off the bridge and into the water. Tuca, even while inside Yuna's body, grabs her sword and enlarges it, slicing the monster in half. Everyone is stunned, because he managed to do that even though he's in Yuna's body, and not in Cyan's. The princess then says he must have truly become the legendary hero, but the monster regenerates and charges again. Tuca manages to defend himself just in time. Henri uses magic to immobilize the enemy, and Tuca takes the opportunity to strike the monster's head, weakening it. Colin casts a lightning spell that paralyzes the creature. Then, Negan and Colin finish the job together, stabbing the demon and finally defeating it once and for all. Colin looks around the room and notices that the high-ranking demon who had been casting spells used the battle as a distraction to escape. And just as he's about to go in and check, a zombie appears and nearly bites his leg. He sees a horde of zombies ready to attack and runs out of the room, yelling for Tuca to shut the door behind him. At that moment, they realize the high-ranking demon is now out on the streets. The princess fires an arrow, and Tuca strikes with his massive sword, but the monster dodges both attacks. Then Colin uses his sword as a springboard and jumps into the street. As he's about to strike the monster, an arrow comes out of nowhere and pierces his abdomen. A man named Diego steps out of a dark alley and claims that this demon serves him. He says he's the one who possessed the high-ranking demon that was working with Leland. Diego asks if this hero is truly that strong, and Henri ends up revealing all of Tuca's information to him. After learning that Tuca killed Cyan, Diego asks if the boy also wants to destroy all of humanity. He asks Henri and Tuca to join his team of necromancers seeking revenge for the mistreatment they've suffered. He says their goal is to ensure the world is filled with monsters, but Henri refuses, saying she made a promise to Cyan to save the world. Tuca and the princess interrupt, asking this insane necromancer to give up his idea of revenge and talk to the king to reach a peaceful agreement. They promise to help him politically, but Diego just laughs. He says that ridiculous idea will never work, and apparently he has forgotten that demons were the true enemies of the necromancers, since demons have always made them suffer. But according to him, now demons are the best allies of necromancers, and together, they will defeat humanity. He then uses his eye orb magic to locate the hidden survivors and turns them into zombies, quickly calling them to assist him. Colin tries to hit him with lightning, but the necromancer's sixth sense detects it beforehand, and he commands the demon beside him to protect him. At the same time, Tuca sees a massive number of zombies. They're coming toward him, so he quickly transforms his sword into a giant wall to block them. Diego summons an axe to kill Tuca, but Tuca manages to distract him by starting random conversations. He begins bluffing and tells Diego to release the humans immediately if he wants to live. And while Diego keeps listening to Tuca, several zombies try to break down a wall behind him. Diego is afraid to advance, because Tuca must have some kind of special power since he was able to kill the great hero. Tuca says he'll show him that power now, and out of nowhere, Diego is knocked down by something from behind. Tuca then reveals that he asked the mayor to fetch the enchanted carriage while they kept the villains occupied. He asks Henri to take control of the zombies with her necromancy, but at that moment Diego gets back up, and despite the heavy blow, he's still doing just fine. He quickly reminds Henri that her mana will soon run out since she's controlling so many monsters at once. The mayor calls for reinforcements, which turn out to be the legendary heroine Millie, Yuna's younger sister, and she's accompanied by her group. Millie strikes Diego with her holy sword, but he blocks it with his axe. Fieri gives him no breathing room and summons multiple lightning bolts onto him. His witch companion uses her magic to lift the necromancer into the air and hurl him away. Fieri rushes in to kill the demon, but by this point in the fight, Diego seems immortal to everyone. Even after all that, he doesn't seem injured, and he still manages to land a blow on Fieri's hand. The necromancer then summons a flying giant and flees, announcing that his spell will soon begin converting the infected into demons. The princess volunteers to lure the zombies into a room and lock them inside, while Millie and Shannon inspect Colin's injuries. But the spell is too powerful for her to reverse, and Colin's transformation into a demon is now inevitable. He then gives all his crystals and magic tools to Tuca and asks him to promise to kill all the demons for him. The next morning, Tuca and his team send the mayor to the capital to report everything that happened, and they promise to handle the situation before anyone else transforms. Colin ends up staying behind to protect the town, and Tuca remembers Ciruela's message, saying they should head to Yuna's homeland because something was happening there, though he doesn't even remember what. So, while the group of demon hunters travels in the carriage, they decide to start a presentation. That's when we find out Fieri used to be one of the 4 knights, but was exiled from the capital 4 years ago because of his obsession with female breasts. A pretty bizarre reason. They also find out Dorote used to be part of Cyan's group, and she's been noticing something strange about the current hero's behavior. When they ask if something happened, Tuca himself convinces them by saying the great hero won't speak until the gates of hell are sealed, and everyone believes what Tuca says. And as mentioned before, Yuna is Millie's sister, and she asks Yuna why she's been acting like Tuca. Tuca, in Yuna's body, says it's because they've grown very close, and Millie starts complaining about it, saying she and Tuca are going to get married because it's a promise they made when they were younger. The princess quickly stands up and asks Tuca if that's true, and Tuca says they did make that promise when they were kids. Actually, Millie challenged him to a fight, and he ended up losing, because he didn't think he could lose to a girl. Since then, Millie has believed they would get married in the future. Meanwhile, Fieri is annoyed by the fact that a mere farmer has had so much influence over his daughters. He orders Yuna to return home as soon as the mission is over, but Tuka protests, still in her body, saying she's always wanted to be a mage. But Fieri doesn't care. He says she has no magical talent at all, and while Tuka is trying to figure out how to respond to this difficult situation, suddenly their path is blocked by a giant boulder. It turns out Diego gathered as many people as he could to hunt the great hero, and this is just one of the traps set by one of those gangs to ambush his group. Out of nowhere, a giant scorpion monster jumps in front of the carriage, and our main characters try to escape another way. But they fall into another trap and plummet off a cliff. Tuka manages to transform his sword into a cushion in time, and no one gets hurt in the fall. However, his charade is abruptly interrupted, because Millie is shocked to see her own sister wielding the sacred sword. The princess interrupts all the excitement, saying that according to the map, they are nearby. So they decide to go there to get a new carriage, or repair the current one. As they start walking, visibility suddenly drops due to a thick fog. Millie clears the fog with her sword and confidently continues on her path. She doesn't notice another trap in front of her and is nearly impaled by a wooden stake that falls on her. The fog returns, covering everything again, until suddenly Millie senses the presence of a demon. She runs to warn the group, and everyone tries to figure out a way to see through the mist. They prepare to protect the hero's body, and meanwhile, each of them is being watched by a necromancer nearby. She uses her magical fog to camouflage a monster that sneaks up and attacks the princess, piercing her torso. She falls face down on the ground, and Tuka looks around and realizes that all his companions have met the same fate. At that moment, a white cloth is thrown over him, and the demons, along with their leader, descend to face him. Tuka, afraid of dying, promises to hand over his holy sword in exchange for his life, and to prove he's serious, he throws the sword at the necromancer's feet. However, she lied when she said she wanted to spare his life, and quickly orders a demon to kill him. That's when Tuka reveals that Anne had already taken control of the demon that was killing everyone. Anne controlled the demon and faked the whole thing. The performance was perfect, and so, the villain ended up stepping out of her hiding spot, putting herself in danger. Tuka starts mocking the villain, saying she's been defeated. That's when he realizes she's his former master, named Ethel. Tuka can't hide his excitement, and accidentally reveals that he is Tuka in Yuna's body. This forces Anne and the princess to explain to the group what happened to Yuna, and Tuka decides to tell everyone how he met Ethel. Back when he lost his parents, while trying to return home, he ended up falling into one of the clever traps set by his master. She found him days later, took him to her home, and took care of him until he fully recovered. Once he was better, he begged Ethel to take him back to his house, and during the journey, he asked her to teach him how to create traps as amazing as hers. However, she refused, explaining that she was a fugitive with a high bounty on her head, and that he'd be in danger if he followed her. Even so, he insisted on going with her, until she finally gave in. Back in the present, he asks Ethel why she's siding with monsters, and she says she witnessed the reopening of the Gate of Hell, which completely changed the way she sees the world. She suggests they visit the place so they can understand what she means, and then begins walking away, taking the holy sword with her. Tuka intervenes, asking her to join their group, and when she refuses, he reveals that he had placed a needle in the real sword. The one she's holding is a fake. Surprised, Ethel throws the fake sword away and acknowledges her students' skills. She accepts defeat and decides to help them. She informs the group about a nearby workshop where the damaged carriage can be repaired. However, as punishment for her loss, and for all the trouble she caused in their lives, Tuka demands that she show him her melons. She refuses, so he asks her to at least wear for a few seconds a slightly exotic outfit. Meanwhile, on the way to the capital, the mayor encounters a few demons, which are easily taken down by Belarco. After that, he leads the Lancers to a cave, where he reveals a boat he plans to use to reach the inn in the capital. At the same time, our heroes, now accompanied by Ethel and her pet demons, arrive at the home of a retired craftsman. The craftsman politely asks them to leave him alone. Ethel, ignoring the request, begins forcing the lock to steal another magic carriage. As soon as the door opens, they are surprised by the old craftsman, who greets them with a spear in hand. However, the damn old man ends up walking off with Yuna's melons. He grabs them tightly while calling her Scion. Ethel then introduces the old man to everyone. He is Leto, Scion's own grandfather, and noticing Scion's presence around them, the old man invites them in for tea. After inspecting the carriage, he tells them the damage is serious, and that the repair will take about 2 days. But the princess says she can help, because she's capable of learning anything quickly. She then quickly reads the craftsman's books and says she's ready to help with the repairs. Taking advantage of the moment, Tuka tries once again to ask Millie about her supposed status as a legendary heroine, but she hesitates to reveal anything in front of Ethel. The master senses the tension and proposes an exchange of information about the enemy, which convinces everyone. So Millie reveals that her holy sword is a human creation, and that there are 3 other similar ones scattered across the world. Although they aren't strong enough to seal the gate of hell again, they are effective in eliminating the Dark Lord and his generals, who possess regenerative powers that can't be neutralized with ordinary weapons. Ethel, fulfilling her part of the deal, reveals that the evil necromancers are in possession of the bodies of the demon generals and have gathered over 1,000 demons, all ready to attack the humans within a few days. She recommends the group avoid the city of Elvania, saying it's better for them to head straight to the gate of hell. However, Tuka replies that even if he doesn't care about humanity as a whole, there is someone he's determined to protect, and because of that, he will make sure to eliminate every demon he finds. Millie and Tuka end up alone by the side of a lake. Millie asks if the person Tuka wants to protect so badly is her sister, and he says yes, because he can't let her die. He then asks Millie how she got her sword, and she replies that she won it in a tournament. She then challenges him to a duel, just like the old days, once again wagering their future marriage. Tuka tries to decline, but Millie starts launching magic projectiles at him, forcing him to run in fear. Since she doesn't stop attacking, he decides to counterattack, but he runs out of mana, and his sword loses its stiffness. Millie easily knocks him down, and he accepts defeat. However, instead of being happy about her victory, she actually feels sad. She forces Tuka to face reality, explaining that he's far too weak to protect her sister. Even so, Tuka assures her that although he doesn't have enough power, he'll use his intelligence and strategic skills to save her. This comment makes Millie recall a conversation she had with Cyan, in which the great hero confessed he only managed to save them 3 years ago thanks to the traps laid along the way, all of them set by Tuka. Tuka feels a little bad knowing the hero acknowledged the power of his traps. He then walks away from Millie, and to forget all of this, he decides to find a quiet place where he can admire Yuna's body. But just as he's about to do so, he suddenly wakes up in the city of Elvania, in the past, and has no idea how he got there. He tries to stir up some confusion in the city, thinking it might bring him back to the present, but realizes no one in this world reacts to what he does. Suddenly, he realizes it's the day he first met Yuna, and runs to the meeting spot. As expected, she appears, and after chatting for a bit, he notices that only people he considers strangers behave strangely in this world. Yuna says goodbye, and goes off to fetch something. And when she's gone, our hero realizes that in this world, he could easily win Yuna over. Just then he hears the voice of adult Yuna, who threatens him, saying not to get close to her younger self. He follows the voice and finds adult Yuna sitting on 3 trees. She explains that this is an illusionary past created by magic, and in this world, she's like a ghost. No one can see or touch her. They both realize this world is made from Tuka's memories, and that Yuna was pulled in because her soul is sharing his body. So they begin thinking of ways to escape this world as soon as possible. Tuka suggests they leave the city and head somewhere he's never been, to test if that will let them escape. On the way, he asks how Yuna knew his name the first time they met. She says she used to see him alone, a sad loser, isolated in his own corner. So she looked into him a bit before deciding to help him. Soon after, they arrive at a completely white space. When Tuka tries to touch it, his hand goes right through. He then decides to explore the other side, tying a rope around himself so Yuna can hold the other end, just as a safety measure. However, the force of the movement drags her along, causing her to fall into her childhood home, where she's having tea with Tuka and her sister. They then go searching for another white space. They realize that every time they cross one of those spaces, time moves forward. After several attempts, they arrive at a timeline from 5 years ago, when Tuka was about to leave Elvania with his father to attack a village that had been destroyed. Next, they jump to the day his father disappeared and his mother went out to get medicine, only to end up dying. This time, Tuka decides to defy fate and runs off to save her in time, despite Yuna's protests. He enters the city and finds his mother collapsed on the ground. He approaches her, and she hands him a letter from Yuna, apologizing for not being able to protect him. She dies in his arms shortly after. The next day, still trying to find a way out, they cross a battlefield that is still ongoing and end up before the gate of hell. There, they see the structure open, with creatures emerging from within, forcing them to hide. When Tuka is about to head toward the White Gate, Yuna starts a conversation with him, saying that even though her soul isn't present in her body, she can still see and hear everything around her. She says she heard the last conversation between Tuka and her sister, and now she feels bad, realizing Tuka truly wants to save her. So she apologizes for not recognizing his worth before. This leads Tuka to open his heart. He says that years ago, when he was isolated in that place and almost lost hope, it was her letter that gave him the strength to keep going. She says that although he may have saved her once, she's the one who has been saving him since the day they met. Their serious moment is interrupted when a sort of meteor crashes nearby. When the smoke clears, a powerful demon appears, one Tuka has never seen before, not even in his memories. The creature confesses it created that illusory world because it has a certain obsession with human memories. It invades memories and devours its victims when they're tired of reliving the past. Faced with the danger, Tuka grabs Yuna's hand and starts running as fast as he can. The demon says the only way to escape is by defeating him. To do so, Tuka accelerates through time, jumping from one memory to another until he reaches the strongest point of his mind. Along the way, they encounter Cyan and Kyle. They ask them for help fighting the monster, but since they are just fragments of the past, they are easily defeated. Reaching his mental peak, the enemy reveals that it feeds on souls and can only do that through many memories. It also explains that its real body is vulnerable in the real world, and only by defeating it can the illusion be broken. However, with the city under attack, no one will be able to rescue him in time. Tuka tries to reshape his sword into various forms, but the monster dodges them easily, as it's the one who created the space they're in. Tuka then takes advantage of the fact that Yuna is invisible to the demon. She positions herself behind it, helping Tuka land a blow. And the funniest part is that the demon can read Tuka's mind. So, throughout the whole battle, Tuka shuts off his brain and thinks only about thighs. Not chicken thighs, but female thighs. And after thinking about thighs so much, he transforms his sword into a gigantic woman's thigh and completely crushes the enemy. The spell instantly breaks, and Tuka wakes up in Yuna's body in the real world. With his enemy still right beside him, after everything that happened, he's able to see Yuna's spirit nearby. But before he can say anything, his allies arrive in a rush. They inform him that they were attacked by monsters, but managed to handle everything, and their carriage is ready to go. At the same time, several elite warriors sent by the royal court finally managed to track Diego down and quickly storm the place. On the other side of the screen, we see Tuka being forced by Yuna to return to Cyan's body. And as he talks to her spirit, the others begin to think he's lost his mind. So he clarifies to everyone that he's talking to Yuna's ghost, whose presence is visible in his mind. Henri uses her magic to analyze the situation and concludes that the long time spent sharing the same body has created a spiritual bond between them. They decide to hide Yuna's body in a chest in the carriage, so Fieri doesn't discover that his daughter has become a zombie. The plan was to say that she had returned to the village alone, but unfortunately, Fieri overheard their whole scheme. Meanwhile, something else very interesting is happening. The mayor of that city where everyone turned into zombies manages to reach the capital. There, he confesses that his original plan was to get rich using the city. However, after seeing how the people came to love and respect him, he began to care about everyone there. He promises to do everything he can to save them, but all he can really do is ask for help. Meanwhile, in the villain's lair, the enemy necromancers are suddenly caught off guard by Illich's warriors, who break through the ceiling and surround them. Commander Levin decapitates Diego, but using the power of one of the demonic generals, Diego begins to regenerate his own body. A warrior cuts off his hand, but he counters with a punch and also recovers from that wound. Another member of the warrior team tries to attack Friedrich, but the villain opens a kind of black hole that sucks the enemy in. He then summons his true sword and completely dominates the battle. Nearby, 3 warriors try to face Diego, but he summons a hellish general to eliminate them. At the same time, on the throne, the king, the supreme mage, and Ciruela watch their soldiers being defeated. The king decides he must march to Elvania, but before they can act, the mayor and Belar finally appear. They explain everything that happened in the city of Moran and urgently request reinforcements. The king hesitates, claiming that assembling a troop will take time, but the mayor kneels and begs for the lives of his people. Ciruela then volunteers to lead the knights, even asking Kyle for help, and the king grants her permission. At the same time, Fieri forgives everyone for hiding the fact that his daughter became a zombie, and the blacksmith creates a magical transmitter to maintain long-distance communication. Everyone sets out, and Ethel, who hadn't planned to join them, ends up following just to say goodbye to Tuca. However, the king binds her and forces her to help. The king's forces also head to Elvania, with Kyle among them, whose goal is to defeat the enemy generals on his own and kill Tuca to take the title of hero. The group of heroes arrives at the city, but before they can enter, they are attacked by projectiles. Tuca raises a shield and deflects them all, ensuring safe entry. Inside the walls, they come across thousands of demons, and during a clash with the skeleton possessed by Diego, Ethel lures the group and stabs Tuca from behind with a magical blade. He falls, covered in blood, and Diego confirms with magic that his soul has been destroyed. He allows Ethel to carry his body to Friedrich, but in truth, it was all part of a plan. Tuca's soul escaped thanks to a spell cast by Henri, which cancelled the possession right before the fatal blow, and now he's infiltrated the castle. Henri joins them, and as they reach the city center, Tuca suddenly has a nosebleed, and before they can react, two demonic guards appear. Tuca uses magic to transform his sword into a camouflage, and with Henri's help, they transfer their souls into the enemy's bodies. Now in disguise, they head toward the main gate, where they find some people being attacked. Since they can't reveal their identities, Tuca wraps a red cloth around his face to resemble a high-ranking demon, and it works well. He enters the area and manages to distract the demons for a while, and for a brief moment, he speaks to the girls, revealing that he's human, but asks them not to celebrate, as he still can't save them yet. He soon returns to Henri and Alana. Suddenly, two low-ranking demons appear. They say the demon race never tortured humans until Diego showed up. They explain that their queen, Adele, taught them to respect other beings, and the two demons beg them to free their queen from Diego's influence. The two guide them to the throne room, and once everyone enters, they realize the queen is the very demon who turned them into zombies. Tuca introduces himself as a traveling demon and says he's willing to help her defeat Diego and build a fairer world. But the demoness hesitates, afraid of seeing half her people wiped out. Even so, Tuca convinces her, saying that together, they can try reasoning with Diego. He approaches her calmly and earns her trust, and at the right moment, he touches her forehead and casts a spell that knocks her out. After that, he knocks the two demons down, and just as he's about to slice Adele into pieces, a portal suddenly opens above him and pulls him in before the final blow. Henri manages to pull his soul back into Tuca's body just in time, and suddenly Friedrich appears stepping out of a portal in the wall. This shocks Henri, seeing that her brother is still alive after all this time. At the same time, Diego watches everything and orders his army to go after the hero. Miri becomes worried and tries to contact Tuca with a magic radio. He replies saying they're late and asks her to keep stalling the enemies. Right after, she's hit by a purple slime that burns her clothes, drawing the attention of all the perverted demons. Inside the castle, Friedrich asks his sister why she's siding with the hero. He suspects the so-called great hero manipulated her, but she says she's standing with him by her own choice. She recalls the time when necromancers were hunted and begs her brother not to follow a dark path. Friedrich says he never wanted to harm innocents. His plan is to destroy the elites and place necromancers in power, creating a safer world for their kind. The innocents that die along the way are just necessary sacrifices, and he believes the greater good is worth it. He then says Tuca is the one who killed the hero she admired so much, yet she still stands beside him. Henri says the hero's death was an accident, and that Tuca has done everything he can to help her fulfill her promise. At that moment, Diego bursts through the wall with his general and tries to make Friedrich kill his sister. He orders his pet to drain Adele's magical energy to keep the zombies as they are. Now, everyone must stop Diego and his demon general to put an end to the zombification of people, and it's up to the heroes group to face them. Elsewhere, the rest of the team lures demons into traps set by Tuca. Tuca, along with the girls, tries to escape the general, but when Diego corners them, Tuca asks for his sword back and proposes a fair duel. He calls out his opponent, and Friedrich warns that Tuca is a cheating hero. In response, Tuca says if he wanted to, he could have defeated them already. He declares he wants revenge for what they did to Yuna, and Diego falls for the provocation, accepting a duel to the death at the top of the tower. Meanwhile, Ethel learns of the duel and summons the demons from her army to support her disciple. At the top of the tower, Diego chooses to use the general's body to fight. Tuca summons his sword in a giant version, but his enemy is fast and moves behind him. Diego throws him against the wall and moves in to finish him, but Tuca suddenly activates a hidden trap, sending Diego crashing down multiple floors inside the tower, landing right where Ethel and her army are waiting. They all cast powerful spells on the monster, preventing him from regenerating. At the top of the tower, Friedrich prepares to strike, but Sion, supported by Henri, stops him with a kick. Henri asks Tuca to take over Sion's body so they can combine their strength. He does so and drinks several drops of soma, quickly piercing the monster with his giant blade. However, Diego is still intact. He reveals that his absorption ability blocked the attacks, and he let himself be hit by the lightning just to observe Tuca's plan. With no other option, Tuca runs to Yuna and Henri, asking the necromancer how Sion defeated that same general. But all the two girls know is that the former hero turned his sword into tentacles to confuse the enemy, so the demon wouldn't know where the strike would come from. Meanwhile, the princess reports that she's in position near the cliff, and Tuca asks her to be ready to shoot when the monster appears. Moments later, Diego shows up, and the princess lands an explosive arrow on him, blasting a hole through his body. That confirms the theory that their enemy must predict attacks in order to defend against them. Tuca then transforms his sword into a giant worm, and Yuna helps the hero locate blind enemies, spiritually positioning herself behind them. He manages to strike the demon multiple times, but Diego's regeneration is fast, and in a counterattack, he rips off Tuca's arm. The hero realizes he has to target the head, since his enemy is also a zombie. But to do that, he'll need to force the enemy to burn through all his mana with constant regenerations. Meanwhile, Ethel faces Friedrich, and tries to convince him that Diego is just using their plan for his own ends. Tuca keeps fighting Diego, slashing and gradually weakening the magical shields. Diego, however, is enjoying the pain. He then reveals his suffering spell. That's why he always lets his enemies fight back. Tuca makes another attempt, but collapses mid-charge due to the effects of drinking too many mana flasks. In a moment of distraction from Diego, Tuca tries to land a strike, but Diego blocks in time and throws him far away. With no other choice, Tuca takes a few more drops of mana to keep fighting. But this only causes him to completely lose his senses. Anne realizes she must take control of the hero's body, because the last option in that moment would have been to fight. But she doesn't do it, because if Tuca's soul returns to his original body, he'll die instantly. Anne then decides to buy time, since Tuca is still alive and might recover consciousness. Yuna does her best to wake him up, and in that tense moment, Kyle bursts onto the scene. The necromancer says she doesn't trust him and prepares for battle, but before any confrontation happens, some demons try to ambush her. Without hesitation, Kyle throws his shurikens, shredding the monsters and saving the girl, even though his true goal is to get revenge on Tuca. Diego tries to interrupt their reunion, stretching out his claws to strike, but Kyle reacts fast and slices the attacks to pieces in an instant. He then turns to the monster and tells him to take a look at the city. When Diego looks, he sees reinforcements from the capital approaching, and is shocked. Kyle makes it clear he's there to settle things with Tuca, and for that reason, he suggests Diego retreat for now. However, Diego takes offense to this and begins absorbing several demons, accumulating an absurd amount of mana. He then fires a powerful blast at Kyle, who manages to defend himself, but ends up nearly naked in the process. Meanwhile, Yuna is growing desperate, and all she wants at that moment is for Tuca to wake up. At the same time, we see Tuca's soul has been taken to the realm of the sacred sword, where Sion approaches him. Sion bows and thanks him for everything he's done. He reveals he's been watching since the very beginning, but Tuca, suspicious, thinks he's being tricked into dying and runs off trying to save himself. Sion chases him, and the two end up in front of the Mirror of Desire, a mirror that shows a different vision to each person. It displays an ideal world for the previous wielder of the sword to live in. Tuca feels a strong urge to enter this new world, but Sion warns him it's a one-way path. If he crosses over, he'll never be able to save Yuna. Sion explains that Tuca only ended up in that world by accident, and he still has time to return to the real world and save his beloved. He also reveals that during the battle in the capital, Tuca's mana increased so much that the sword recognized him as a new legendary hero, which is why the sacred sword fused with his soul. Sion shows him the way out, but warns that things on the outside will get much harder, and that he'll face even greater challenges. So, if Tuca wants to stay there, he won't stop him. But Tuca says he's already made his decision. He must save Yuna, and with that, he returns to the real world. There, we see Diego relentlessly attacking, launching powerful spells that barely miss their target. Diego's body is full of energy thanks to the absorption spell, meaning only physical attacks can hurt him. The problem is that draining his mana this way would take a lot of time and skill. At that critical moment, Tuca returns to the hero's body, ready to fight. He asks Henri to release his body from the coffin and slams his sword into the ground. The sword emits powerful electric bursts, so intense they force Cyan's soul to leave it and fuse with Tuca's original body. At that moment, a charming new version of Tuca appears, and without wasting time, Cyan flies toward the demon and slices off his arm with the sacred sword. Kyle tries to approach and hug him, but Cyan steps back and says he saw all his actions up to now. Diego prepares to launch another attack, but Cyan intercepts and slices him rapidly, also destroying the magic crystal on his forehead. Without the crystal, Diego loses temporary access to the profession spell, creating a window of opportunity for Tuca to finish the monster before it can regenerate. Tuca shortens his sword, focuses his mana into a single point, increasing the blade's piercing power. With that, he jumps straight at Diego and cuts him into several pieces. The monster even tries to regenerate, but Kyle shows up and lands a hit with his shurikens. Now, there's exactly 1 minute left before all the people turned into zombies become permanent demons. Tuca unleashes all his power, using his abilities and charging at the monster at absurd speed. He dodges all the tentacles along the way, and even with Diego trying to raise a shield, Tuca manages to land a direct hit on the enemy's head, piercing through his bones and finally eliminating the disgusting monster. Even so, Diego manages to escape his destroyed body and teleports into a forest, where he had hidden a coffin that holds his original body. However, his soul is so exhausted that he can't even move, and just as he starts to feel some relief, 2 low-level demons appear, seeking revenge for the death of their queen. The next morning, all the zombies return to normal, and to Tuca's misfortune, his master disappears. The same goes for Henri. Her brother also vanishes. Thanks to the victory, the mayor organizes a tribute to the hero, and several girls line up just to offer themselves to the loser. Yuna, feeling incredibly jealous, pulls him into a private room. She doesn't know why she did it, but Tuca believes the moment has finally come for him to become a real man. Yuna gets ready to do exactly that for him. But at night, Tuca remembers that Cyan is always watching. He does it through the sacred sword, so Tuca throws it far away, saying he doesn't want the hero to see this. Yuna hears Tuca say that, and realizes that hero Cyan probably saw everything she was about to do. She dies of embarrassment and runs away, and so Tuca spends yet another night with only his hand for company. In the end, we see that before disappearing for good, Cyan left one final request for Tuca. He needs to raise his mana level before going to face the gates of hell. And for Tuca to grow stronger, Cyan asked Kyle and the princess to go find an old ally of his, this old friend being a mana specialist. Thus, the worst hero of all time sets off on a new mission. And that's how this awful anime ends. I almost cried recording this video. I've never suffered this much in my entire life. The worst part was actually watching the anime. Even at 3x speed, I almost died.